These are the best movies of every year of this century, in my opinion. If I'm gonna be honest, I'm not the most enlightened when it comes to movies, but I'm definitely a big fan. When making this list, I wasn't really going off of anything specific, any metrics or qualifications. I kind of just wanted to choose movies that I felt like had some sort of impact on me or have shaped me as a person throughout the years. I do believe that there's gonna be something in this list for everybody to enjoy. There are 25 years within the century, so I'm gonna have to be going a little rapid fire. I might have a lot to say about some years and a little bit about others, but regardless, I do recommend all of them nevertheless. I don't even use that word. 2000s, American Psycho. This movie is one of the more introspective and psychoanalytical movies on this list, in my opinion. If I'm gonna be honest, I had to rewatch this movie a couple times because initially I didn't really get what was happening. I was just confused. It just confused the shit out of me for some reason. Patrick Bateman is honestly an interesting ass character to talk about because the movie itself leaves his character open to interpretation. If you haven't seen this movie, it's basically a social commentary on yuppie culture and male superficiality. If those words make no sense to you, don't worry, they confuse me too. But basically, we just follow a mentally ill man hide his identity in a world where individuality is practically non-existent and just blatantly ignored. I actually really like this movie, even though I didn't really initially understand it at first, because it left me with a lot of questions about the society we live in today and about what role I want to take within it. Don't get me wrong, I'm not over here on some Joker shit saying that we live in a society. It's just a head scratcher for me, and I really like the movie for that reason. 2001, Donnie Darko and Spirited Away. Donnie Darko is a eerie sci-fi film that I find to be a little confusing on first watch. I don't really know why I like confusing movies. It's just a thing, I guess. It has a thought-provoking plot, an interesting script, and even more interesting characters. Personally, for whatever reason, I've noticed that I love stories that leave me a little confused. That's not really the hardest thing to do. It's just, this is the first movie that made me aware of the fact that that's some shit that I like. It's classified as sci-fi thriller, and although it is, I feel like it's not something that only sci-fi thriller fans could watch. That's because I feel like the plot and side stories are so interesting and captivating that I feel like any movie lover will enjoy. Spirited Away, on the other hand, is another movie that's similar in the fact that I feel like a lot of people on first watch might also be very confused watching it. And although I'd probably say that I was able to keep up with what was happening in the movie on the first watch, I can also say that the movie made me feel a little uncomfortable in some weird way. The world that Miyazaki creates is so beautiful and extremely immersive. If you are an animation fan, I just advise you to fix your brain because honestly there might be something wrong with you. Animation can be used in so many different ways to portray elements of a story that live action movies just simply can't compete with. This movie uses a lot of those elements and uses them well. I can't really quickly sum up how great this movie is, but I will say the feeling this movie gave me throughout it was just comfortably uncomfortable. And if you don't really understand what I'm saying when I say that, just watch it yourself and you're 100% gonna understand right off the bat what I'm saying. 2002, Spider-Man. I think it's safe to say that every man has a hero that comes to mind when people ask them who their favorite superhero is, and mine just happens to be Spider-Man. This is more of a nostalgia favorite pick because honestly, growing up, I didn't get to watch many movies, but one that I remember watching over and over again and loving every single time was Spider-Man. Spider-Man is a hero that basically everyone knows, and this movie is partially the reason for that. Even though there are multiple renditions of the Spider-Man character, and this Spider-Man isn't necessarily my favorite, this movie is the one that started it all and ultimately helped launch the subgenre that is superhero movies to be where it's at today. 2003, Finding Nemo. Finding Nemo is another basic entry that I'd be really shocked to hear that you haven't seen. This movie is another one that I feel like doesn't really need a full detailed explanation on it. Most people have already seen it, and if you haven't, then you're missing out. And although this might be answered as another nostalgia pick, it's not really here for that reason. That's because I feel like the movie itself has great characters, a great story, multiple messages that are just very, very impactful. Not to mention the amazing animation. 2004, Shaun of the Dead. Alright, I think I developed consciousness this year because this year is a pivotal one, especially in regards to my humor. White Chicks, Mean Girls, Napoleon Dynamite, Shrek 2, the SpongeBob SquarePants movie. This all probably means nothing to you, but these movies were all impactful to me when it comes to shaping my sense of humor. I recommend all of these movies, but if I had to choose one, it would probably be Shaun of the Dead. Initially, I had Napoleon Dynamite here for its initial impact, but recently I had a chance to watch Shaun of the Dead for the first time in theaters, and oh my, do I love this movie. It's genuinely so stupid, and honestly, that's one of the best parts about it. The sharp cuts and transitions paired with the amazingly timed sound designs is so inspiring for somebody like me that wants to be a future content creator. I just love every single element of this movie, the comedic timing, the acting, the stupidity, the fucking everything about it. And even though it's British and that's kind of cringe, it's still good. It was pretty funny, and that didn't matter. 2005, Chicken Little.
The sky is falling!
2006, The Departed. This movie's a crime classic that I feel like anybody can enjoy. Billy is a police officer who goes undercover to infiltrate an Irish-American mob syndicate to inform the police department on the whereabouts and action of said mob. Colin Sullivan is basically the opposite, infiltrating the police department and reporting to the mob boss. The story follows both of these characters as they play this sort of cat and mouse game to try and find the identity of one another before they themselves are found out, because being caught essentially means death. This is a very, very simplified version of what this movie is about. And yes, I just read a synopsis that I wrote because I didn't want to give you any major or minor spoilers for the movie, because I feel like even giving you minor spoilers would be doing a disservice to you before watching this movie. It'll keep you on the edge of your seat and have you so invested with the characters whether or not you agree or disagree with some of their actions. If you haven't seen this movie, definitely give it a watch, because although it has a runtime of 2.5 hours, the story itself is so immersive that it makes it feel so quick, precise, and complete. Plus, it's one of my favorite endings of all time. And if you haven't seen it yet, I'm not going to spoil it for you, but trust me when I say it's going to leave you extremely satisfied. 2007. Ratatouille. This movie wasn't too eventful for me because even though I know there are a couple movies that are said to be iconic, I haven't really watched them yet, so I have to choose between the movies that I have seen already. But even if I have watched some of those movies, I still feel like I'd have to put Ratatouille as one of the top contenders for this year. Ratatouille is another movie that I feel like a lot of people have already seen, and the concept itself is a little obscure because it's about a rat who wants to be a chef. But when watching the movie, you realize that it's not really about him being a rat and wanting to be a chef. It's about embracing your dreams and proving to yourself and everyone else that if you love something enough, you could achieve it by just putting your mind to it. 2008, Kung Fu Panda. 2008 was another year that I really didn't have that many movies to pick from, but I ended up settling with Kung Fu Panda because honestly, it's another great movie. Similar to Ratatouille, it's about basically somebody that has a dream and puts their mind to it to achieve it, even though nobody believes in them. I really like this movie because even though it follows Po, there are like secondary, maybe third storylines with different characters throughout the movie that I feel like make it so much better. Like for example, my favorite character, Tai Lung, who I feel like it just goes so misunderstood because it's a kid movie and I feel like a lot of people just don't think it's going to be that deep. But when you look into it, you realize that Tai Lung's backstory is actually really sad and tragic. He's literally destined to fail, and I feel like that's something that I really love to see within a story, just another story. You know what I mean? Yeah, this movie was great as a kid, but I feel like watching it over as an adult is even better because now I feel like anybody could pick up on little things like Tai Lung's backstory and understand a little bit more about where all these characters are coming from and see how deeply thought out a lot of this world was. 2009, Coraline. Coraline isn't really a movie that I was necessarily fond of as a kid because honestly, it used to scare the living shit out of me. Like it was so icky and like gross and like those button eyes, like ugh, it's disgusting. I tried to finish watching the movie multiple times as a kid because it was good, but ultimately didn't get a chance to until I was older because I was a little bitch. When I did eventually get around to finishing it, I did end up liking it for multiple reasons. Coraline is about, well, Coraline discovering like a magic mirror dimension, I guess, in which she finds a better version of her parents, the people around her, and quickly realizes that maybe it's not necessarily what she wants after all. The animation itself is also one of the big reasons why I chose this movie above the rest because it's so interesting and spooky, and that's really awesome to see for a Western animated movie. 2010. This year had a variety of movies that made an impact on my person. Inception, Step Up 3, Tangled. It was a good story. But if I had to choose one movie above the rest, it's a clear winner with one of my top 3 favorite movies. Directed by Edgar Wright, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World.
We are Sex Bomb, and we are here to watch Scott Pilgrim kick your teeth in! 1, 2, 3, 4!
It's one of my favorites for a variety of reasons. It follows Scott Pilgrim, a man who's just straight up a bum. He meets a girl named Ramona Flowers, who he ends up falling madly in love with. But the thing about her is that she kind of has questionable taste. So much so that all 7 of her past exes have decided to make an evil organization to basically try and find and beat the shit out of, if not kill, any future potential partners that Ramona might have. So yeah, the plot is basically Scott fighting those 7 exes, and there's a subplot of his self-development as well. This movie is so fun, and the plot is just the beginning of it. Stacked with an A-list cast, an amazing soundtrack, and peak humor, in my opinion. This movie gives off one of the most enjoyably stupid roller coasters of a ride that I've experienced in any type of movie. It also kind of has like a retro video gamey vibe with its incorporations of fun VFX and SFX. It's honestly one of my biggest inspirations when it comes to content creation, because I just love the overall production of this movie. 2011's Rio. I'm gonna be really honest, I have no movies that I really loved this year, but I did really enjoy Rio. It's just a fun little journey about self-discovery and self-assurance that happened to be told through the perspective of a bird. 2012. Perks of Being a Wallflower. This movie was one that I really didn't want to watch initially on release because it didn't really seem like my type of movie, but I was really wrong. Although some of the movie's dialogue was very cringy and unrelatable to me, I did just enjoy the story's message overall. This movie follows the character Charlie, who off the bat we could tell is a little off. The plot initially seems to be about his relationship with his friend, but it kind of masks the actual plot, which is more about his mental health, which is definitely more complex. This movie deals with depression, anxiety, SA, and DA, which I feel like they did a pretty good job at depicting. Although I will say it's kind of corny, I did overall enjoy the message. That's probably one of the main reasons I wanted to put this on the list. I feel like it does a really good job at showing all those elements without kind of going too far, and I really like the fact that it could do that and make the movie enjoyable without undermining the seriousness of each of those topics. 2013, The Great Gatsby. Once again, I'm selfishly inserting a purely biased take here. This movie literally fucked up my perspective of love, because for whatever reason, I envied the kind of love that Gatsby felt for Daisy, and that's just mentally self-destructive. He has everything in the world, and to give it to the person he cares most about to truly show her how much he loves her. I guess I kind of completely missed the message of his character, because his character was at the peak of success and kind of destroyed himself with his hyper obsession over his love for a girl. And although it's easy to just blame Daisy, it's not necessarily her fault, it's his fault for not having enough self-restraint. It's a great story, a good movie, and I just wish that I understood the message a lot sooner. 2014, Whiplash. This movie is intense. I really wanted to pick Interstellar for this entry, and some of you might even be mad for not picking that as this year's movie. But honestly, Whiplash definitely just takes the cake this year. This movie follows a young man named Andrew and studio band who gets hyper obsessed with becoming the best drummer to the point of self-destruction. This movie had me at the edge of my seat for the entirety of its runtime. Each angle, cut, visual effect and scene slapped me across the face, intentionally making me feel so anxious and immersed. Somehow this movie made me envy the toxic trait that he had with self-obsession within his craft, because it made me admire the lengths he went to just achieve such an ambitious dream. I'm gonna admit to you guys that I did end up tearing up for the end of this movie, and honestly I don't even know why. I think it's because of how beautiful yet self-destructive the nature of obsession could truly be. I honestly don't know, man. There's probably something wrong with me, but this movie is honestly amazing, and I think everybody should watch it. 2015, Project Almanac. I wanted to give this to Ex Machina, but honestly I couldn't because I don't really remember the movie enough. I didn't really want to rewatch the movie for the sake of this video. So yeah, sorry, I might be lazy for that fact, but I honestly don't care. The movie I ended up choosing, however, is a little similar with Project Almanac. And yeah, it's kind of another biased pick. It's just another movie about time travel with some fun characters and some not so fun characters that I kind of despise. The story was fun and the ending was alright, but if I'm going to be real, the reason I put this on the list is because it's my first ever commentary on this channel. For that reason, I wanted to put it on the list, partially because of that, and also because I really haven't seen many other movies throughout this year. So 2016, A Silent Voice. A Silent Voice is probably my favorite movie of all time, at least when it comes to animation. The story follows Shoya Ishida, a young man who holds this deep hatred and resentment towards himself for bullying a young deaf girl named Shoku Nishimiya. My bad if I mispronounce any of the names. After the events of what happened in elementary school, he develops this sort of social anxiety and depression due to the repercussions of his actions. It gets so bad that the movie depicts it by his lack of ability to look people in the eye because of his shame and anxiety. It kind of has like this X across everybody's eyes that he's ashamed to look at, which honestly is one of my favorite elements of the movie. When he gets to high school, he's sunk deep in a pit of depression when he remembers that he never truly actually apologized to her. He quickly tracks her down to apologize and return a notebook of hers when he finds himself accidentally asking her in sign language if she wants to be friends with him. He ends up building this relationship with her throughout the movie where they're kind of friends, but he truly doesn't believe that he deserves her friendship, let alone a friend at all. The movie follows him and Nishimiya's story as they develop a friendship, and he struggles to forgive himself and accept the good things that are put right in front of him. It's about a lot more than just this, but out of fear of spoiling it, I'm not going to say any more. I just strongly recommend everybody, and I mean everybody, watch this movie. This movie also has one of the most captivating, uncomfortable intro sequences I've ever seen in an animated movie, so just be warned. But I'm also going to say it has one of the more emotionally satisfying end sequences that I've ever seen before as well. And if you dislike animation or anime, fuck you. 2017, Boss Baby. 2018, Hereditary. Hereditary is literally my type of horror movie, so I just had to make the list. On my first watch, I literally had to pause the movie and turn on my lights because of how freaked out I was by the idea of those demonic entities and random naked people spawning out of thin air. I know I might sound like a little bitch, but if you haven't seen the movie, I don't want to hear it because you have no idea how scary that shit actually is. It's not really a jump scare type of scary movie, even though there are a few jump scares. It more psychologically messed with me by messing with my mind and keeping me at a state of eerie confusion and also sprinkling little bursts of jump scare here and there. And if for whatever reason this is what you want, that's your type of movie, I guess. 2019, Knives Out. This year was initially a clean sweep for Joker, but when looking through the movies that came out this year, I saw that Knives Out was one of them. And come on, if you've seen Knives Out, you know that it has to win. Knives Out is a classic murder mystery story with a little bit of a twist. Off the bat, you see the murder take place and end up following the perspective of the person trying to get away with the crime. You end up building a fondness for her because of her pure heart and just how truly kind of a soul she actually is. With the A-list cast, amazing plot, and captivating storyline, there really isn't much bad things I could say about this movie. And I loved that there were hidden plot elements and character quips throughout the movie that somebody like myself could use to kind of predict what happens throughout the movie, which I did. 2020, Soul. I'm gonna be honest with you, this year was not the greatest because when I went through the list of movies that came out this year, I realized that I actually literally watched nothing, like literally nothing. It got to a point where I was contemplating putting a TV show here instead of actual movies. But no, that's kind of stupid. So instead I just decided to pick a movie and watched it, and that movie was Soul. This movie was great. I'm so happy I chose to watch this movie. I think even if I want to watch any of the other movies, I would have chose this one because this story hits so close to home. A message about an arrogant man who is so obsessed with his passion that he'll literally transcend death to achieve it. It just hits so hard for whatever reason. Although I hope I'm not as rude and arrogant as Joe, I do see a lot of myself within him. And the ending made me really appreciate what it means to be alive, especially as someone who is constantly concerned whether or not I myself am good enough. This movie just felt like a big hug, and it made me feel okay in a lifetime full of anxiety and stress. 2021, Cruella. I know people are going to be shocked that I play this movie here, but I definitely think it deserves its place. Out of all the Disney live action remakes that I've seen, this honestly is probably the best one. It's not anything crazy, but it takes the iconic Disney animated villain Cruella and tells a different, unique story. Although that might sound extremely cringe at first, it's not as cringe as it may seem because even though it has a lot of the characters from the original movie, it uses them in a very different way and kind of tells a completely different story altogether. Emma Stone and Emma Thompson convey really mean women very well, and it's honestly kind of fun to see how they interact with the rest of the world. The colors, outfits, and characters they use make the storytelling so much more immersive. Plus, I literally love the music. I know a lot of people might say this movie might have too much music, but come on, is there ever actually such a thing as too much music? 2022, Everything Everywhere All at Once. This movie was literally an acid trip of a movie, and although some people might think that's a bad thing, trust me, it wasn't. At a time where multiverse movies were starting to seem a bit overdone, Everything Everywhere All at Once released with an interesting, funny take on this concept. It follows Evelyn Wang as she goes through this crazy journey to defeat an alternate version of her daughter before she completely destroys this world by actualizing a black hole bagel and walking through it. Yeah, the plot might seem a little crazy, but trust me, it's good. It's not solely particularly about this adventure or even mainly about it. The plot itself is more about Evelyn's relationship with her husband, her daughter, and mainly herself. The ending message of this movie is ultimately really nihilistic, but also is just very beautiful because it's about what it means to live and love. And even though that might seem a little corny because, you know, love is corny, it does it in more of a comedic serious way than a super serious lovey-dovey way. 2023, This year was probably the hardest decision for me to make because it was the year where I first started getting deeply into movies. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, Guardians of the Galaxy, The Boy and the Heron, Society of Snow, great movie by the way. All these movies were so good for so many different reasons, but of course there has to be a clear winner, and that's gonna be Barbenheimer. I mean, come on, obviously it was gonna be that. Like, what else do you think it could have been? A generational cinematic event where all the girly pops and Christopher Nolan fanboys showed up and showed out. Both movies were pretty good and quite the opposite of each other. Oppenheimer follows, well, Oppenheimer on his race to create the atomic bomb and the psychological toll it takes on him, as well as some of the aftermath. It was a long movie, but surprisingly it felt really quick because I feel like all of it was just super condensed and perfectly paced. Barbie, on the other hand, was an adventure comedy following, well, Barbie on her journey of self-discovery of becoming a woman. It was honestly just a fun, lighthearted movie that was really enjoyable for me to watch because of just how random some of the shit was. It honestly speaks on what it means to be a woman, but I can't really say anything on that because, you know, I'm a man. 2024, The Wild Robot. Initially for this year I was actually planning on having two completely different movies, but in the midst of me filming and then editing this, I ended up watching The Wild Robot in theaters, and I made the decision almost immediately that that movie was going to take the lead. It's not to say that the other movies aren't good, it's just that this movie is so good. Plus, I'm a big fan of animation, so most of the time, any animated movie is going to take the top position for me. This movie has so much, including beautiful animation, amazing voice actors,
Brightville is where he belongs,
emotional depth, and captivating storytelling. And this isn't even mentioning that this movie isn't just meant for children, but it definitely is something that you could bring any child to watch as well. That's honestly another reason why I like this movie. It's because I love the fact that you can bring the whole family, but everybody's going to walk out of the theaters with something different from this movie. Personally, my favorite thing about this movie is the fact that it's so honest. There's a scene within the movie that I don't want to really spoil too much, but basically things are going down and they're trying to save as many people as possible, and in reality that's not the case. You can't save everybody even if you want to, and the movie is just not afraid to show that, and I just love that. I really feel like that's one of the scenes that just made me feel like, wow, this movie is so amazing. This is one of the movies that I feel like if anybody hasn't seen it, I would strongly recommend watching it with your family, with your partner, with friends. It doesn't matter. It's just such an amazing movie, and I really hope that you consider watching it after this video. And that was my list of the best movies from every year of this century. Hopefully I was able to remind you guys of some amazing movies and maybe even able to put you onto some other ones. While making this video, I've come to the realizations that I haven't really seen as many movies as I thought, and I've added so many new movies to my watch list. Like, I literally had some fill-ins for some of the years with movies that honestly shouldn't even be here, except Chicken Little. That shit is goated. If there are any movies you guys recommend, let me know in the comments down below, and who knows, I might even make a movie commentary out of it. Also, let me know if you guys agree or disagree with any of these takes. I'd love to have a conversation down below in the comments. Other than that, guys, if you guys enjoyed the video, please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Adios.